Curious Lloyd.
A disclaimer for any government officials, mobsters, or assassins in general watching this. I don't believe that any of the following conspiracy theories about these mysterious deaths are true, but disturbingly compelling though they might be, I'm only funning around here. With that out of the way, here's 5 mysterious deaths that'll make you believe in conspiracies. A British spy locked himself in a sports bag from the outside. Gareth Williams was a codebreaker for MI6, the same British spy agency that funds James Bond's martinis and syphilis shots. He collaborated with the NSA to help thwart planned terrorist attacks in Berlin, Paris and London. Obviously, with a job like that, an early death isn't completely unexpected. What was unexpected was where Williams turned up dead. In August 2010, only a week before Williams was due to be transferred to another agency, his body was found zipped inside a red North Face sports bag that had been locked from the outside, as in, literally locked with a small padlock. Because that wasn't weird enough, the bag had also been placed in Williams's bathtub. At first, authorities claimed that someone else would have had to have been present for this to be even possible. But then, in November 2013, they changed their mind, saying he probably did it himself. And if you type it into the internet, his death, it states it was an accident, somehow. What you have to think is it even possible to bag and lock yourself like that? After 300 failed attempts to replicate such a feat, experts told the police that it is in theory, but not without leaving some trace of DNA on the lock or in the bathtub, which Williams didn't. In fact, there was barely any DNA evidence in Williams' apartment at all, leaving us with 2 options. He used Jedi or Harry Potter powers to move things around without touching them, or someone gave the place a science-proof scrub like Walter White in his meth lab. Meanwhile, the police pointed out that Williams reportedly owned women's clothes and visited bondage websites, implying that this is some weird sex thing. In that case, wouldn't there be DNA everywhere? Also, Williams was unhappy at work and had been talking about quitting MI6, and that his bosses took a week to report his disappearance, which conveniently made it harder to determine his cause of death. And yeah, a paranoid person could think that instead of giving him a retirement package, they decided to turn him into one. Frank Olson jumped to his death after the CIA gave him LSD. Practical jokes are the lifeblood of the American workplace. Who hasn't hidden a co-worker's inventory, or changed their desktop image to something funny, or spiked their drink with LSD as part of a mind control experiment? The last one seriously happened to the CIA employee Frank Olson, who took the LSD without his knowledge and had a pretty bad trip, meaning he jumped out of a 10-story window, which I previously mentioned in my psychological experiments video. But that's only the official story. According to Olson's family, the CIA is hiding something even more messed up. The CIA went through a period starting in the 50s during which they thought it would be cool to secretly slip acid to see what happened. Frank Olson worked for the agency during that time as a bacteriologist and a biological warfare scientist. Hard work they rewarded by drugging him. According to the CIA, Olson was unable to deal with the effects of LSD and committed suicide 9 days later in the midst of a nervous breakdown. Also, the government has admitted all of this happened. Gerald Ford personally apologized to Olson's family for the little workplace mishap. But the family weren't buying it. They say that Olson suddenly wanted to leave the CIA after a trip to Europe. He allegedly told people that he witnessed the same deadly biological agents he'd helped develop being used in interrogations that went well beyond the traditional good cop bad cop techniques. His wife remembers an anguished Olson saying he made a terrible mistake. So in one hand, the CIA have this scientist who's having second thoughts, and in the other they have this new drug they are planning to use to delete agents' memories. After that, they sent Olson to New York for a psychological evaluation and put this supposedly mentally unbalanced man on the 10th floor with a chaperone, who was shocked, utterly shocked, when he decided to inject himself through a closed window. The building's operator says she overheard the other agent make a phone call that went like this: "He's gone." That's too bad. If you take away one lesson from this one, let it be this: never tell anyone you're going to quit your government job. Just move and don't look back. Karen Silkwood crashed her car right before blowing the whistle on her bosses. Karen Silkwood was part of a long tradition of employees who borrow stuff from their job and take it home. In her case, plutonium radiation. The good news is that she didn't grow any extra arms or give birth to green babies. The bad news is that she didn't have chance to, because a week later she died in a car crash. Silkwood worked at Kerr-McGee nuclear fuel plant in Oklahoma and had been speaking about the poor health and safety conditions there. As it turned out, she was onto something. One day whilst wrapping up work, she did a routine self-check and tested positive for plutonium contamination. They even found traces of radiation at her home. Naturally, Silkwood thought this was some major information and wanted to go to public with it. She contacted David Burnham of the New York Times, gathered some evidence about the extreme negligence of the power plant, and on November 13th, 1974, drove out to meet the reporter. And what do you know? That's when she had the car accident. The evidence she was carrying against Kerr-McGee apparently evaporated, because by the time the police discovered her body, it was gone. Quaaludes were found in Silkwood's car, and twice the recommended dosage in her blood, which is enough to transform full-grown adults into drooling babies. However, as you all know, when you throw a drooling baby into a wall or out of a window, they tend to land floppily, and as a result incur less damage to their bodies. Silkwood's injuries, on the other hand, had all the signs of someone who was very alert and tense upon impact. Also, her bumper had evidence of rubber and dents, almost as if someone had rammed her off the road, or exactly as if someone had rammed her off the road. Kerr-McGee's involvement in the accident was never proven, but at least they ended up paying $1.3 million to Silkwood's family for getting the poison thing, and Silkwood was portrayed in Meryl Streep's in a major motion picture. I'm pretty sure she'd rather be alive than famous, but still, that's something. Crime novelist hanged himself wearing a bulletproof vest and brass knuckles. Professional writer and tough guy, Eugene Izzy was getting ready for his next work of crime fiction to hit bookstores when he was found dead. Who found him? Not one person, but thousands of citizens of Chicago. On December the 6th, 1996, holiday shoppers looked up in horror to see Izzy's body hanging by a noose from the window of his downtown writing office like a morbid Christmas decoration. The police ruled it as suicide, but something doesn't make sense. If you wanted to kill yourself, why would you put on a bulletproof vest? In addition to the vest, a loaded gun was in the office, and stuffed into Izzy's pockets were a set of brass knuckles, $481, a mace-like spray and some printed notes, and 3 computer disks containing a work-in-progress novel. On the one hand, I'm guessing his death was swift thanks to all the stuff weighing down his trousers. On the other hand, that's a bit odd, don't you think? Oddly enough, the biggest clue was in the most innocuous object. Those notes were transcripts of threatening phone calls he'd been getting. At the time of his death, Izzy was researching an Indiana white supremacist paramilitary group that he planned to expose in his next book, and it turns out that those guys don't like it so much when you do that. Izzy felt threatened enough to move into a hotel away from his family, and carried a gun on him at all times. At one point, he let a friend listen to his voicemail, and one call in particular stands out. A woman left a message saying he'd be hanging by the end of the year. However, the cops also pointed out that Izzy's death was eerily similar to a scene in his unfinished novel, right down to the bulletproof vest and brass knuckles. Did he give out advance copies to the militant men and inspire them? Or was this some kind of viral publicity? He did manage to release 3 books after his death, so maybe he's actually living somewhere in Europe with Tupac and Elvis. Danny Casolaro slashed his wrists whilst investigating a government scandal. Danny Casolaro was a man obsessed with uncovering a vast government conspiracy he called the Octopus. Shockingly, he only used tinfoil to wrap food and looked like he bathed fairly often. The most compelling piece of evidence for his theory? Him turning up dead right before he said he was about to prove it. It all started with something as innocent as the Justice Department pirating software. Casolaro, a journalist, was researching a story about how the DOJ allegedly stole a piece of software called Promise from a company called Inslaw and started selling it to other countries, and then drove Inslaw into bankruptcy. A judge sided with Inslaw and accused the Justice Department of trickery, fraud, and deceit, only for his ruling to be overturned and for him to lose his job. Looking into Inslaw, Casolaro met up with computer expert Michael Reconcioto, who said he helped the DOJ modify Promise to spy on the other countries using it. Anyway, only a week after testifying to all of this, Michael was abruptly arrested for dealing meth. You might be seeing a pattern by now. Everyone who spoke up in the Inslaw case ended up worse off than they were before. Despite that, and despite no longer needing an alarm clock thanks to all the threatening phone calls he was getting, Casolaro kept digging, and then, just as he was supposed to meet up with the source who could help improve everything. He turned up dead in his hotel room with 12 slices to his wrists. Casolaro was very squeamish about blood, by the way. His brother thinks he would have passed out after one cut, let alone a dozen. His notes about the case were never found. And now for the freakiest detail. Casolaro's family says during the funeral, a decorated military man showed up in a limousine, placed a medal on the lowering casket, and left. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and I will catch you Sunday with another video. The CIA is hiding... Fuck's sake, the CIA. CIA. That's enough now, Lloyd. Get on with it.